So today we're going to trace the origins of one of America's first and most notorious serial killers. We're going to peel back the layers of the myth to understand not just what H.H. Holmes did, but really how a monster like him is even made.
You know, long before the world heard about the infamous murder castle that became this house of horrors during the 1893 Chicago World's Fair, there was just a man named Herman Webster Mudgett. Right, so the big question we have to ask is, what happened? What turns a man into a monster?
Okay, let's get into it. Our story doesn't start in some shadowy, terrifying castle. No, it starts with what seemed like a pretty normal, even bright, young man. From a young age, he had this real interest in medical science, a passion that would end up setting him on an incredibly dark path. When you look at this timeline, it seems, well, promising, doesn't it? He was on track for a perfectly respectable career as a doctor. But here's the thing. Something happened during these years of study, something that would completely, and I mean horrifically, change him forever.
So where did it all go wrong? What was that turning point? Well, the key to understanding his transformation, it doesn't lie in some big, dramatic, singular event. No, it's in the quiet, methodical work he did day in and day out in the university anatomy lab.
And get this, the freedom he had here, it was absolutely critical. This wasn't just about learning anatomy like every other medical student. It was about unsupervised, constant, repeated exposure to human cadavers. And that set the stage for a really dark psychological shift.
Okay, so this idea of desensitization, it is everything to the story. Think about it. Every single day in that lab, working with bodies, it made him less and less sensitive to the idea of death. A human body stopped being a person. It just became an object, something to be studied, taken apart, and manipulated.
And this quote just nails it, right? It perfectly captures what was happening inside his head. That line that separates scientific curiosity from just morbid calculation, it started to blur, and then it just disappeared. To him, the dead were no different from the living. They were all just material.
I mean, look at this. You can literally see the before and after right here. All that medical knowledge, all that ambition that should have been used to heal people, it got twisted into this terrifying tool for exploitation and, as we'll see eventually, for murder.
So, with this completely warped new way of looking at the world, it really didn't take long for him to start putting his ideas into criminal practice. He started seeing opportunities where, normal people would only see grief and loss.
This was his first big criminal scheme. And you can see it's a direct line from that desensitization in the lab. For him, these weren't people's loved ones he was stealing from graves. Nope, they were just props in a very clever scheme to make a lot of money.
But you've got to understand, this wasn't just about the money. Not at all. This was basically his training ground. This whole scheme just cemented his view of people, whether they were dead or alive, as disposable assets, just things to be used and then tossed aside for his own benefit.
And then, we see what might be the big escalation. I mean, it's one thing to commit fraud using the dead, right? But this suggests he made the horrifying jump to causing the death of the living. And, true to his developing pattern, when things got suspicious, he didn't stick around. He just vanished, ready to find a new hunting ground. So where does he go? He lands right in the middle of booming, chaotic Chicago. And honestly, it was the absolute perfect place for a predator like him to just disappear into the crowds and completely reinvent himself. And this is a big deal, the name change. He wasn't just running from his past, he was burying it. He shed the skin of Herman Mudgett, the student, and he fully became Dr. H.H. Holmes, the character who would go on to build that infamous murder castle. And this final quote just says it all. I have no regrets. It's chilling because it confirms everything we've been talking about. The desensitization was total. It was complete. The monster wasn't born in the murder castle. No, he was created piece by piece in the quiet halls of a university anatomy lab.